Welcome to the Conan Fitness Platinum webinars. This time we're looking at motivation, or the topic of motivation, more specifically the psychology underlying it. It's just one of those topics that, it's always spoken about. It's a really broad topic, motivation is, but there's often a lot more to it than what people think, and that's what we're going to go into today. We know that there's a lot of very successful people out there in the way of health and fitness, and people that are successful in the way of their fitness or their physique, or getting really good, abundant energy levels, and even in totally transforming themselves into a more vibrant, confident, healthy person. And yet, there's also the vast majority out there. And I think we all know that most people, the vast majority, they aren't necessarily, overly successful in the way of their health and fitness, or at least not to the level that they want. There's many people that aim to lose weight, or they've been aiming to lose weight all their life, or maybe they're trying to get better performance and fitness levels or physiques, and they're constantly trying without necessarily achieving results at the level that they want. So what is it? What makes the difference? Those distinctions that draw the line between the few who succeed versus the many who don't. What is it? And that's what we're going to look at today. And as you'll come to see, a large part of it has to do with not necessarily ability, but the underlying attitude towards it, like a perception towards it, the whole approach that one would take mentally, and therefore the psychology behind it, and that's what we're going to see today. That literally makes a difference of night and day. So the first thing I want to look at, and this is a bit of a pre-frame of what we're going to go into, is that after years of working with people and years of experience, we've kind of come up with what the 5 top reasons are for people who don't succeed, why, the reasons why someone might not. And as I said, the first one, which is really a bit of a generic kind of generalization, is motivation. And as you'll come to see, that we don't actually think motivation is the best word to use, but we use it as a layman's term because it's what most people say. But really, this topic comes down to motive and the driving force behind one's actions, and how it should be an emotional one. Emotions are what drive us. And the next thing that we'll go into later on is about willpower, and how a lot of people put motivation and willpower in the same kind of boat. But, my suggestion is not to rely on willpower. Willpower alone is great, and if you can have it, then fantastic. But the way willpower works is just your present moment state, in that given moment in time. And if you're feeling strong and empowered and in a positive state, then fantastic. Your willpower will be sky high. But all it takes is just one slip, one little deviation, or something throws a spanner in the works, so to say. And that slight slip in focus is all it takes for a seed of doubt to be implanted. And whatever slip it is, it kind of just weakens your resolve that little bit. And then often the willpower will spiral down from there. And that's what often happens when someone relies on willpower. So we don't want to do that. We want to, what we call, stack the odds in your favor, so that even though you're inevitably going to get your ups and downs and roller coaster ride of life, that you'll still succeed. So we'll go into motivation in a lot of detail. Next is what we call discipline, or what we say lack of personal control. And this is very much related to someone's values, what they value most, and their personal standards. And again, we'll go into that later on. But ultimately, we are what we think about. So mind control is important. Emotional resilience is important. As we said, stuff will always come up. And to a fit person, someone who just lives the lifestyle, who has very good personal control and personal discipline, something comes up, but it doesn't really matter, because it's just a kink in their road. They're used to it. They'll overcome it because it's just what they do and who they are. Whereas you take someone who's, not so fit, or, not into that lifestyle, and something comes up, and to them it's a brilliant excuse. You can see the difference in someone who has the personal control versus someone who doesn't. Next is a lack of a proper plan. So, is the plan or the program you've got, is it scientific, based on scientific data? Is it accurate? Is it designed for you? Many people will set a goal, and they'll start towards that goal, but they've got like an inappropriate plan. It's not realistic, or it's not viable based on their lifestyle or their ability levels. And sometimes it's just too much too soon. Like in one's haste, impatience to get great results. They'll go with the plan that's just, the most dramatic, which everyone kind of promises the fastest results. And in doing so, often what's most dramatic doesn't necessarily, doesn't work, at least not long term. They say slow and steady often wins the race. So a plan is important. The next is consistency. And we always go on about consistency is better than brilliance, because you might have a 100% perfectly brilliant week, but if that's all you got, then it's not going to help you. The person who does 70, 80% perfect week, they had a 20, 30% slip, but they do that for their whole life, they're going to be miles ahead of you. So consistency is important. And this is often related to someone's commitment. And it speaks for itself. If someone's got great desire, a great motive, so they've got motivation, and they've got the right plan, the plan's been worked out specifically for them, they still need the consistency to adhere to that plan. And again, this comes down to lifestyle. It comes down to not relying on willpower, as we mentioned, and overall importance. How important to you is this goal? Because the higher level of importance, the more likely you're going to consistently stick to it. And as we spoke about commitments, you might set a goal. And if you start, half-heartedly towards it, like someone says, I'll give it a crack, and if the results come, then, that'll be motivating in itself. So, I'll push it a little bit harder. But what do you usually find when you give something a half-assed effort? You don't get any results, So that in itself is demotivating. You get disappointed and you throw the towel in. And that's why consistency is so important. And finally, prosperity mindset. We call it prosperity mindset, meaning how prosperous can you imagine your results? How much can you bend your mind? How much can you stretch it as to what's possible? Because that says a hell of a lot about your motivation. What we call our standards and our expectations. How high are your standards of what you honestly expect for yourself? Because that is a ceiling. Ask yourself honestly and literally, what do you expect from your health and fitness, over the next year or whatever? What would you literally put your money on? Because that, say put your money where your mouth is. If you wouldn't put your money on you getting your ultimate desire, what does that say? That says that your mind just cannot believe that you have the ability to do that, and your standards are lower than that. What you will expect, and therefore your limitations, they are already preset in your mind, like a map or a blueprint that's already there, and you won't outgrow that. You need to change the standards and expectations and grow or stretch the prosperity mindset, what's capable for you. So next we're going to have a look at, I mentioned about motivation not necessarily being the technical answer, that's just the layman's term. So if it isn't really motivation, what is it? Well, firstly, let's look at the types of motivations. There's intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic, the motivation comes from within you. It's for yourself. You want it, versus some outside source. Extrinsic means, your doctor said you need to do it, or your wife or partner or husband says, you should do it, or social influence, peer pressure or something like that is some outside influencing factor. And what you'll find inevitably is that while both are good, if you play sport or something, having internal motivation and external motivation, that's great, because that's better than just having one. But ideally, intrinsic should be the strongest. And the people who achieve the most, their motivation is from within. They want to do it for themselves, not because someone else says it, but because they want it the most. And next is this dichotomy of what we call toward and away. And this is very important. Towards motivation is when someone wants something for the reason of achieving or going towards what it is they're after. So, I want to be fitter and healthier, and I want the enjoyment of vibrant energy, feeling good, looking good, feeling strong and confident, or being able to perform in X way. Away motivation is focusing on what you don't want. Geez, I don't want to be fat anymore. I don't want to be ridiculed. I don't want to be treated differently. I'm sick and tired of X, or I'm sick and tired of Y. I'm fed up with low energy levels. I'm sick and tired of it. And the difference sounds like just a statement. Sounds like you're just stating the goal in a different way. And I suppose in one respect it is that, but there is such a big difference, because it's like driving and looking behind you focusing on where you want to go away from. So I want to go away from that destination. But that is completely different to looking ahead at where you do want to go. You get much better direction. Now, again, like intrinsic, extrinsic, it's good to have both, away motivation and towards. But here's the difference. For people that own, and this brings us to the concept of pain and pleasure, by the way. When you are working towards something, you are talking about pleasure motivation. I want to go there because that would be pleasurable. That's some sort of good experience. And to move away from something is, I want to move away from that of being overweight or fat or unfit or falling behind my teammates in fitness levels because I'm holding the team back, whatever it is. And I want to move away from that because it's painful. It's like some sort of displeasurable, painful experience. So in the concept of pain and pleasure motivation, and as you can see, this quote below says that everything we do has got something to do with pain and pleasure motivation. We come up with what we call negative and positive goals. And a negative goal would be something that, states what you don't want, like the word quit, I want to quit this or stop that, or lose, I want to lose weight, some sort of focus on deprivation. And the converse of that is focusing on a positive goal. What will you gain? I want to gain a fit, vibrant body. I want to gain confidence, respect. I want to gain some sort of worth. Whatever it is that you would gain from it is a much clearer objective. And we'll have a look at the downfall of pain motivation by itself. As I said, pain motivation and pleasure motivation are both good because they're motivation. They're motivating you to go towards the goal that you want. But there's a problem with having only pain motivation. And some people say that pain motivation is actually a stronger force than pleasure. And initially, I would tend to agree, to say to get someone moving, pain motivation. I'll give you an example. We worked with a lady some years ago. It was classic. We got a diary where we fill in, what we eat and do and exercise. And on the front of her diary was a picture of a seal. And I said, "What's the picture of a seal for?" And she says, "That's my motivation." I said, "What does that remind you of? What is it?" She said, "Well, not too many weeks ago, I was on a boat. She was, sunbaking on this boat. Sounded like a great relaxing, afternoon. And another boat went by, and they said, and there were some seals in the water. And she overheard, when she was a little bit overweight, she knew it, but she overheard some people in the other boat saying, 'Hey, look, there's a seal.' And someone else in the boat said, 'Yeah, and she's wearing sunglasses.' And this cut her. This absolutely cut her so much that was the pain. She said, that is it. And the next day, I'm getting into the gym and, come hell or high water. She was driven. And that is classic pain motivation. And that is fantastic for getting someone moving. The downfall of that is that pain motivation is less enduring, because it's like putting your hand on a hot plate. You put your hand on the hot plate and you are extremely motivated to move it off that hot plate because it's painful. But the minute you move it 1 or 2 inches off the hot plate, 95% of that heat is gone. And although you're only 1 inch off, you're miles off achieving your goals, the majority of the pain has gone. So as soon as you start taking steps towards your goal, just being in a little bit of momentum, it's really easy to get complacent if pain motivation is all you had. It was great to get you going, but not to keep you going. Because as soon as my goal is to lose 20 kilos and I'm fed up with whatever, and I'm like, I get moving, and you lose 2 or 3 kilos, you're certainly nowhere near your end result, but geez, I feel so much better just knowing that I'm on the right path, just knowing that I'm on track. And it's really easy to get complacent when you're so much better, when you feel so much better. So, you miss a few days at the gym, say, oh, well, at least I'm on the right track, right? I've already lost 2 or 3 kilos. Then you miss another day. Hey, it's easy to lose momentum. But pleasure motivation keeps you focused on that goal ahead, the toward motivation, not just away, but toward, and says, there's my goal and I'm not there yet. There's my goal. That keeps you focused. So later on, we're going to show you 5 steps to help you build both pain and pleasure motivation and have you focused at the pleasure motivation. But just know that ultimately, whatever the motive is, we want to relate it to a higher part of ourselves or a higher value. Not just, hey, I want to lose weight, get fit, tone up, because that in itself isn't motivating. But to say what you'd gain, like self-esteem or my self-worth, my identity, the respect I get from others, some higher part of myself that is much more motivating than just the, whatever the words of the goal are itself. I spoke about motive. The base word of motivation is motive. And motive means the reason or the drive, the want, the purpose, why you want to do something. Now just imagine you've got all the motive in the world. Yep, I want to get fit, I want to lose weight, and I want it for these reasons, and this is how much it'll impact my life. Not just, personally, but socially and in my intimate relationship and in the relationship with my kids and my sport or whatever it is. You've got huge motivation, heaps of motive. But deep down inside, you just don't honestly believe you can do it. As in, you've tried before and you failed. You've tried many times and it failed. Or, you got into a bit of a routine and then, inevitably something throws you off course and you get back in and you keep thinking to yourself, I'll never be able to maintain it because I never do. And if there's some sort of doubt, we're not talking about motivation. When people say, I've tried it before, but I just can never stay motivated. What I hear is that really they don't have the belief. They don't have that certainty, the faith or the conviction that they actually can do it. Because if they did, motivation would not be a problem. It wouldn't be a problem. You hear people say that, look, I want to lose weight already, but I just don't have the motivation. But you'll also hear that same person say, if I could just start getting some results, those results would be motivation in themselves. Like someone says, once I get into a routine, if I can start getting results, the results themselves are motivating because, they boost me up a little. And when you think about it, that confirms this totally because it says it's not the motive that isn't there. It's that getting some results says, holy shit, this is actually possible. I'm actually doing it. They start to get a bit of movement, a bit of progress, and it builds their belief. So they work harder, they get better results, builds their belief. When we talk motivation, a big, big part of it is belief. And that's what we've got to build. We'll show you later on not only how to build motive, but to build belief as well. And we're going to go into what are our strongest drives. But before we do, I just want to quickly touch on stages of change. And most people know this model. I only want to touch on it because it in itself isn't the deep enough level that we want to go to in this webinar, but it does have some practical implications. So we'll go into it. The first, for those that are unfamiliar with this model, it just says there are 5 stages to someone changing. And the first stage is what we call pre-contemplation, which literally means before they've even contemplated it. So they haven't even thought about it. They're not even aware that there's a problem. So obviously there's no intention to change, which just means it doesn't matter all this talk about motivation and belief. It just means nothing if someone doesn't actually realize that there's a problem or that they need to change. So we're assuming that not only they are past pre-contemplation, but step 2 is that they're well into contemplation. And this is where they acknowledge, yep, there's a problem. They're thinking about it. There's no specific plans because they're only thinking about it. That's the next stage. That's preparation, when they start to not just focus on the problem, but now they're starting to think about a solution. They're thinking about small behavioral changes and getting committed. Step 4 or stage 4 is where they actually into full action, or at least some sort of observable change in behavior. And if you can keep this up, ideally you'll get into some sort of routine or regimen, and you can get to maintenance. And ideally, maintenance is a lot easier to stick with than, say, preparation or action. But even then, there's always that possibility or temptation for relapse. You can always fall back into pre-contemplation or contemplation. So obviously, we want to go for that consistency. But just know that we have to want to change and know that there is room to change. Otherwise, none of this is even important. But what are our highest or strongest drives? Now, we already mentioned about pain and pleasure. This is but we are emotional creatures. So some of our basic drives have to be emotional. We want to have both reasons of pain. What is it that we really want to avoid? I don't want to do that. I don't want to get there or let myself slip, and have those reasons. And more importantly, we want to have the reasons of pleasure, something that we can focus on long term because it's more enduring. And again, they have to be emotional reasons. If we can link these to our values and human needs, like the part of us that's most important, like you hear about Maslow's needs, and he's mostly focused on some sort of physiological needs to start with before getting up to the emotional ones. But either way, we've got things that we prioritize. And if this area or topic of our life is at highest priority, nothing will get in the way. Whereas if it's like somewhere down the bottom of your hierarchy, anything will get in the way. Anything will come up, and this will take the back seat. So your values, what do you value more? Is it confidence in a strong body, respect, or is it sleeping in right now? Or is it, just getting some work done, or is it looking after yourself and having fantastic energy? And we also spoke about our standards and expectations. These are a really important part of our strongest drives or drivers, because what are the preconceived notions that you have of what's possible or acceptable or even desirable? This will set limits for you. And remember that we said this is actually contextual, because someone can have really good high standards for themselves in one area of their life. Let's say it might be their work. They've got great standards and expectations, but then it comes to their health and fitness, and it's really low. Low. It can be very, very contextual. And finally, the area that's probably the highest, the most important of the strongest drives for someone's behavior is their identity. And everyone has a self-image. You have a self-image for who you are and what you do and how you live. And one of the strongest drivers of human behavior is to remain consistent with your identity. When people say, I'm the person who, we all subconsciously have this. And again, it's also contextual. How you are in your work might be different to play, might be different to health, might be different to relationship, but who you are in your identity. If you can change that self-image or, expand it, stretch it to be a higher person, that will have effect greater than any kind of in-the-moment motivation you could ever think of, because you'll always remain consistent to your identity. Take this as example. I'm not sure if you've probably seen it before, the typical tradie or someone who's, maybe not so fit, they might be a little overweight, and they're, they drink a bit or they smoke, or, and they almost have some sort of level of pride in that, instead of getting fit and going for a run or doing some sport, they're kind of like, bugger that, let's just go to the pub and have a beer, and there's a bit of humor there, but there's also a little bit of, pride that, they're the person that can just, lay back and have a beer, or maybe it's the female that just, I like to just light up a cigarette because, I like to be free and relax. And there's nothing wrong with, go and have a beer or two at the pub. When there is a problem is when your identity is linked to it. And if your identity is the person who is always fit and healthy and is the inspiration for other people to be fit and healthy, you act completely differently to the person whose identity is, the person who always struggles with the health and fitness, or doesn't care about the health and fitness. So identity is huge. So we've looked at some of the strongest drivers and the factors underlying behavior and motivation. What are some of the practical take-home strategies you can take away from this? Well, the first is to prioritize. Prioritize this area in your life so high. And one of the best ways to do that is to visualize. Like, have a vision of you in the perfect you. What's the physique you want? What's the energy levels or the performance you want to attain? And make that vision emotional and so vivid that it's compelling. It literally, like it, whets your appetite. You're drooling over it almost. That means it's emotional and it drives you. The next is to set those new standards. Set standards that stretches you, and then accept nothing less. We mentioned about building motive, or the pain and pleasure. You can take these 5 steps below, which I won't go into too much detail, but it just says, write down what it is you desire, what you'd need, or the actions or routines you need to take to get there, and write down the pain or the consequences of not acting. So pain associated with not acting, and the positive benefits of achieving the goal. That's the pleasure associated with it. And then focus on it every day. Focus on that pain and definitely the pleasure, and so you'll constantly have motive. Then get a plan. Do whatever research you need to, consult whatever professionals, get advice, get some sort of plan, and don't be afraid to tweak it. You don't have to get it right the first time. Just start. Don't wait for the perfect plan. Just start and continually tweak it. Like, there will always be trial and error. You learn from your mistakes and you continually get better and better and better. And once you've got a plan and you're doing it, make it a lifestyle. You can't just say, well, that plan doesn't fit around my lifestyle. Change your lifestyle. If you keep doing the same lifestyle, you're going to keep getting the same results. So change your lifestyle around the plan. Make it a part of your identity. And that will provide the most consistency you can ever get. And the next is to hang around others, hang around people who, that pull you to another level, people whose standards and expectations are so much higher than yours that, it rubs off on you, and let it rub off on you. The next is we talked about belief. And you want to build belief, because all the motivation in the world, you won't get started if honestly you don't think you can do it. And one of the best ways to do that is to read stories, whether it's in magazines or online, or even better, actually, people in person, of people who have achieved what you're after, what you want to achieve, and have come from the same position as you. Because you read the story, you start thinking, hey, that person's got the same limitations as me, or challenges, and they did it. Maybe I can too. And then you read another story and it says, that person did it. Yeah, I can definitely do this. You read another story. And ideally hang around people in person that have done it, and it'll really rub off on you saying, yeah, this is definitely achievable. And then break your goal down into smaller, more achievable milestones to ward off any kind of overwhelm. And it'll really entrench the confidence that not only can you do this, but you will do this, and build that belief. And then you act more fervently, you get better results, build more belief. Act more fervently, get better results, build more belief. And finally, once you've got all that plan, all that motive, all that belief, you have to act. Nothing staves off procrastination like action. And even celebrate. Every time you act and get some kind of some little milestone or some sort of results, celebrate that accomplishment, because it entrenches those pleasurable motivations, the pleasurable emotions, and it'll really entrench that within you. So there you have it, folks. We spoke about the psychology of motivation and all those underlying factors that most impactfully affect human behavior, and your ability to achieve and attain your desires. So as always, train hard, play smart, and bring out the warrior within.